morning, good afternoon, good evening, yWhales, wherever in the world you are today. Super excited about our conversation today. We've got Mr. Khori Whittaker here today with ENS. But right now, let's always kind of make sure we understand where we are in the market. It is November 15th, 2022. We are literally maybe about 10 days post FTX current implosion. Sam Bankman is still running around the Bahamas in his mansion, sending all sorts of cryptic tweets. Money is randomly moving around in there. And so essentially what you have is chaos in the industry. No one knows what's safe. No one knows where things are going. And so I'd say from an overall macro perspective, the buildings, there's a lot of smoke pouring out the windows. And we're just trying to figure out where the fires are so we can deal with those appropriately. That being said, it doesn't change a lot of business models. Blockchain has held perfect. I mean, I would say every blockchain technology has executed exactly as designed. The failures we're seeing in the system are kind of the meat puppets. It's the humans and some really egregious, we'll know by the time this recording goes live, we'll probably know more about that. But at the forefront, it sounds like some pretty egregious fraud and felony charges coming down the pipe for Sam and his team. That being said, that's where we are today. Khori, how you doing, sir?
Yeah. Hey, I'm great, Jay. And it's we scheduled this or tried to schedule this a long time ago. So I'm happy to be chatting with you and kudos to you and thinking about yWhales, bringing the community together and starting something from nothing. I think it's providing so much value for all of us. So thank you for what you're doing, man.
No, fabulous. And Khori, for you, as well as anyone that's listening, always, if you're on YouTube, please go ahead and feel free to subscribe. This is content we put out about 3 to 5 of these a week, as well as we're over on Spotify and Apple Music and all sorts of others. But Khori, let's go ahead and start with a little bit of background. So before we get to what you're doing today, where did you come from and how'd you end up here today?
Sure. So I always like to start by letting people know I am from Jamaica, from the island of Jamaica. And my family, we started coming here to the U.S. in the early 80s. First stop was Michigan. Second stop was Southern California. And that's where I grew up. I was just remembering this morning, Jay, I think this was in 91 or 92. My local town newspaper had this competition called Easy Street. And it was like this sweepstakes. You get to answer some questions and then you'd be able to win a prize. And so one week I decided we were going to win this Easy Street competition. So I thought to myself, okay, who is reading the paper? How many people are reading paper? How many people are going to answer these questions and answering them correctly? How many people were going to follow instructions? So I thought, you know what? I think I can win this. So every day that week, I filled out these forms, answered these questions, and then submitted to the contest. And sure enough, we won $5,000. So my mom, my sister, and I, we showed up at the local paper, took the picture holding the big check, and with that check, we purchased the first family computer. And if you're a big deal, right? Big deal for us. And for those of us who are a little long in the tooth, you remember the days of X modem, Y modem, Z modem, the importance of baud rates and what have you. So I was early on BBSs, and then CompuServe, Prodigy, back in those days, So I've always been an earlier adopter in the tech space.
So do you remember if you were more into Prodigy or CompuServe? Because that was like the big deal back in the day.
Yeah, I think I was more of a CompuServe guy.
That's where the good nerds were. That's all the good nerds were over CompuServe.
Right. But after college, my background has been in business and education, and sort of the nexus of the two here in the States, in K through 12 education and then higher education. So when people hear that I have an education background, they have this picture in their mind of me sitting crisscross applesauce reading books to children, which is fun, but that's not actually what was happening. So in the higher ed space, I was involved in governance and working on enrollment management, which is essentially marketing to students, increasing the yield of the marketing, helping to onboard these students, customers, providing them a great experience and allowing them to achieve their particular goals. And then governance with higher ed. And then in the K through 12 space, I ran a network of schools across the country, public charter schools. And with that work, it's contracts, spending a lot of time with bankers, lawyers, policy, procedure, mission, vision, values. Hundreds of people, hundreds, thousands, millions of dollars of commercial real estate. But just a lot of work.
Yeah,
So
and what a journey dealing with that age group. And what's funny in my experience, and I would love to hear yours. That age group is the same. Doesn't matter what generation, they all deal with the same problems, the same issues, the same cycles, the same phases. The clothes and the toys may be a little different, but in the same sense, it is, how do you capture the imagination of these humans that are coming of age?
Yeah. And with the school system, I think we need to do a much better job of meeting students where they are, tapping into their natural potential and not squashing it and allowing them to explore. But we tend to put folks in these boxes and push them through our agenda instead of finding out what moves them, what drives them, and what their unique passions, talents, and abilities are. And hopefully these things will fix themselves over time here in the States. So while I was doing that work, in the nighttime, I was a DGen. No, Jay, do you remember eGold?
Yes. Oh God, yes. Yeah. I mean, way long ago.
Yes.
Yes.
Like 20 years ago. Palladium.
Yeah.
Right. So I was fooling around with that. And so when crypto started to come on the scene, as I mentioned, typically I'm an early adopter, but because of my experience with eGold and electronic precious metals, I was like, do you know what? I'm not going to deal with that now. But eventually got interested in the technology, distributed ledger technology, and the potential of that. And decided as I was making my career transition, and a lot of us in YPO, we go through periods of times where we move from one organization to another to figure out our next step. And I was determined to get into this space. So I winded up at Circle, Internet Financial, USDC,
Yep.
and led a research and sourcing initiative in the talent organization, and then saw that ENS was looking for a leader, an executive director. So one thing led to another, and here I am.
You've gone the full circle of DGen, from educator to being full-time in blockchain. Real quick before we kind of jump into ENS, and I want to talk to you a little bit about the current generation that we have today, which is the millennials and the Gen Zs that are coming of age. And I always like to say that blockchain technology, Web3, is really designed for that younger millennial, and Gen Z, because they're the ones that a decade from now are going to be the ones entering the workforce, and these will be just commonalities, like the concept of a internet domain. Back in our early days when we had to build our own modems, I mean, there was it was very hard for most people to understand. Like, getting online was a challenge, and it was it was not a right. It was an exercise. And could you get it done?
Yeah. It was a quest. Yes.
Oh, I remember. And again, the concepts that we dealt with prior to domain names and actual DNS, kind of bringing all this stuff together, was sticky notes on the side of your monitor with it wasn't even IP addresses most of the time. It was phone numbers, because you had to dial into a specific modem.
That's right.
Yeah, now you remember how. Listen, there you go. We can date ourselves based on how we remember Web 1. Now that I bring back those memories to you, how similar is Web 3 today to early 90s Web 1?
Yes. I would say it is so similar in that people are trying to figure it out, finding their way into this space and trying to figure out what it means, how to use it, how to access it. Back in the day, trying to find the right modem, trying to search for BBSs that could get you the information that you wanted. Like, how were we able to search for information back in those days? It was just hunt and peck, trial and error, And I think right now people are experiencing the same thing in Web3, because there's not a steady, predictable on-ramp. We all come to the space from different angles. So that's a huge opportunity that I want to discuss with you later. But the on ramp is a problem to be solved.
It's the lack of a common language. It's if you have
Mm-hmm.
people speaking, 100 different languages, which they are. You have Ethereum, you've got Solana, you've got all these different chains. You've got so many different on ramps and just utter chaos, because what something means to one person is entirely means something to someone else, and there's no unifying commonality between those two. So people have said for a while that Web3 is in its beanie baby phase, and I disagree. We're in our pre AOL phase. We still have not found commonality, because the other point that to remind you about is, if you were on CompuServe and I was on Prodigy and we both had electronic email, we couldn't email each other back and forth. Prodigy email was Prodigy email, and CompuServe email was CompuServe email way back in the day initially. And it was kind of America Online and everyone else that bridged those gaps and says, we don't care who you're with. You can email to anyone and everyone. And that's that moment that we have not seen yet.
Right. And it's funny when you think about the CompuServe email address, if you remember what they looked like, 74413.567 at CompuServe.com. We are in that space right now with our cryptocurrency addresses.
No, there was no selecting your email address. There was no picking a handle. It's like, here's a randomly assignable thing to add to your sticky note collection on the side of your monitor that weighs 150 pounds and does 3 colors. So Khori, let's dive into, because I for full disclosure, I use ENS. I have anyone can go to yWhales-CEO.eth and you can look at all of my horrible trades and all of the random NFT collectibles that I have, and I keep them publicly there for that obvious reason, that I want people to kind of see the stupid things I do and learn from mistakes that we all make. But talk a lot about the mission and vision of where ENS is today.
So where we were 5 years ago, so Nick Johnson, our founder, incubated ENS at the Ethereum Foundation and then launched it. But the initial goal was to map human readable names onto your cryptocurrency addresses. And our goal is to be, and we are now, foundational technologies, a foundational protocol for the future of Web3 and beyond. And what I've been speaking about a lot lately is, especially with our current environment, simplicity, safety, security. When you think about using cryptocurrency address and exchanging value, the process of copy and pasting hexadecimal addresses into various fields, that's just fraught with potential for error. So we secure that process, make it much more simple. It's j.eth versus your long hexadecimal address. So the first use case was being able to map human readable names onto crypto addresses. And as you've seen, particularly on Twitter, it's sort of morphed into your identity. So there are thousands of people using their .eth as a handle in their Twitter address. And as you also stated, displaying their NFTs and displaying their digital collectibles and your trades. If you choose to display your trades, it's out there. And there's so many other things that you can do with your ENS domain. On the identity space, of course, your handle, you can add an avatar to your ENS domain, and any particular text records that you want to add to that domain as well. It's like your profile page and your almost like a phone book, if you will. So you can go to someone's ENS domain and see where they hang out, what their email address is, Twitter handle, Reddit, GitHub, you name it. It's just a central place to store these things.
It's the DNS of it's the ENS, but think of it as the DNS, the distributed name service of traditional Web 1.1.2, which is when you type in someone's name. You don't, if they transition, and this is a point of clarification for the audience. If you type in, Khori.com, and Khori has a website there, and he decides to move from Squarespace to a different hosting provider, goes from, Amazon S3 to Azure. Nobody needs to care about the back end scene of what happened. They just care that this is the validated, verified Khori.com for his Web 1, Web 2 websites and anything else. Where he hosts is irrelevant. And so you've replicated that over here in Web3, where wallets get compromised, things happen all the time. You just want to make sure that somebody verifies and identifies, who you are based on that
Yes.
token that resides in their wallet.
Yeah, that's right. And if you saw recently, crypto.com apparently had a situation where they sent over 300 ETH to the wrong address. That is a prime
Impressive.
example of yeah, that's a prime example of one of the issues in cut and pasting your hexadecimal addresses, because I guarantee what happened, it's either a controller, a VP of finance, or the CFO with that amount highlighted, right, copied an address that was whitelisted. They thought it was the right destination. Click send, and it's gone. Yep. Imagine if it wasn't a whitelisted address, it would have been gone. That would not happen with an ENS domain. There would be a name, a human readable identifier, and it just prevents the kind of errors that you see happening, because we've all have lost funds, sent funds to the wrong address.
Well, and things happen and change all the time. I mean, the concepts, there's so many safeguards that exist in TradFi, Khori, as you can explain. When one company's wiring another, it's common practice to make a phone call, to call and say, hey, I'm getting ready to wire. I just want to reread back. You faxed me over, or emailed me over some wire instructions. I want to confirm this, because it's a series of numbers, and humans just are not great with numbers, but we're really good with names, and we're really good with seeing things that are validated. And so when we own yWhales.eth, and so it's very easy for us to say, when people are sending in funds or to do anything else, to just yWhales.eth. Now, there's times that we move that around because basically, there's wallets that we don't want exposed, or there's wallets that we do want exposed. And so we can move that around to different wallet addresses.
Yes.
But it doesn't, for the consumers level, they don't care. It doesn't matter. They just know yWhales.eth is, and it gets to where it's going. We control that on the back end, which is really the way it should be. Think about if you had to abandon an email address every time you wanted to make a new one. You can migrate anything and everything. So migration's a key factor here.
Yeah. And the other thing that you can do with your ENS address is subdomains.
Yes.
So depending on the type of transaction that you want to enter into, of course, it could be personalized, j.ywhales.eth. You can have nfts.ywhales.eth, banking.ywhales.eth, but any number of subdomains, depending on how you want to manage your financial life on chain. That's another way you can use them as well.
I love it. So, talk about the status of where things are today. Can you talk about how many users you have, how many domains you've minted, and a little bit of some stats, if you can come up with them off the top of your head? Completely unprepared?
Yep. So right now, and for those of you who don't know, you can go to ens.domains and purchase a domain. It's $5 per year. Last year, in 2021, revenues were over 26 million. This year so far, revenues are over 52 million. So we'll probably end the year around 55. And all of these funds go to the DAO. So that's another thing we can talk about, the ENS DAO, which is responsible for governing the protocol. We have over 600,000 individual users now, which is just tremendous growth. And registrations, I'm going to make sure I get the right number for you here.
Yeah, no, you're
it's like 2.7 million.
That's huge.
Domains registered. Yeah.
So that's a really interesting number. And the reason that's a really interesting number is there's less than 1.2 million Ethereum addresses that have one or more ETH in them. So we're seeing an adoption of and kind of that front running of people going, oh, these are going to be big.
That's right.
This is important. This is something that I want to go ahead and brands, whether or not they're on, brands and people that may or may not already be in Web3, going ahead and saying, I'm not going to screw up and have to go buy my
That's right.
.com for $10,000 or whatever the case is. Let's go ahead and secure these now. Do you
That's
feel
right.
like that's a little bit of what's happening?
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to our conversation earlier about what happened in Web 1 and Web 2, those of us who are around, we're pattern matching now, and we realize. So you hear the language in terms of early. We talk about this being early because we know we have an idea as to what's next and what's coming next. But we are seeing a sort of gold rush, if you will, with people understanding and anticipating the value of a .e and buying up domains. So definitely seeing that. So one of the things that has been supercharging the growth is the community. So I don't know if you've seen on Twitter, but the ENS community is extremely passionate, extremely involved, and they have been the source of our growth and success over the last several years. Because before now, we haven't really had any concerted PR and marketing efforts. It's all been community driven, which has been amazing.
So you've got growth, which is huge.
Yeah.
So currently kind of heading into this bear market. I think unfortunately the FTX implosion is going to cause a mild winter. And by winter I mean like there's just lack of interest from the outside of our kind of our bubble that we live in to want to get into Web3. So I think there's going to be a little bit of cooling off period now through the end of the year until we understand where things are. But hearing about the adoption and growth of ENS is entirely contrary to what we're seeing over on the cryptocurrency market, which is not Web3. Cryptocurrencies are, I think they're cool. I think they're amazing, but I don't know if truly kind of meme coins are the future of commerce. What is the future of Web3 is verifiable on-chain identity. What are some of the concepts you guys are playing with that kind of expand beyond just wallet identification?
Yeah. So that is wallet identification is definitely one of the major use cases right now. Another thing that we're seeing and a challenge is how do you communicate from wallet to wallet? So I've been having a lot of conversations with startups working on wallet to wallet messaging, wallet to wallet communications. How many times have you sent something or received something and that you have no idea until you check your OpenSea or check your Etherscan? So the ability to communicate is definitely something that is coming down the pipeline. Another thing is how do we get the traditional finance sector and Web 2 into this space as well? One of the things that I think is necessary, and with the events of the last couple of weeks, it's just going to happen, a more robust KYC regime.
Yep.
Right. I think we're going to have to get to a place where know your customer, know your business, from an on-chain perspective. So I do see ENS playing a role in that space as well, for verifiable credentials,
That's
verifiable identity, and yeah, I'm looking forward to going down that route.
I love it. So let's take a second and talk about your DAO. I think that DAOs are one of the most fascinating parts of Web3. We've seen the rise and fall of some really amazing, rocket ships that were built over the last 2 years on DAO technology, but the technology is very early. A community like what you're speaking about that's powered by a DAO is a very different thing. Talk about the relationship with of your DAO and kind of how you guys work together.
Yes. So the DAO just had its 1-year anniversary last week, right? So we had a nice little celebration with everyone involved. But the Ethereum Name Service protocol is governed by the DAO. We are the core team at ENS Labs, so we're responsible for developing the protocol, supporting the DAO, and a bunch of other functions. So there are a couple work groups in the DAO. There's a meta governance group, and that is akin to the governance committee of a board. You have a public goods working group and an ecosystem working group. And the meta governance group sort of oversees what's happening with the protocol, looking into the treasury management, and just making sure the DAO is working well. The ecosystem group, a lot of activity is happening there, and I'll share some of the stuff in the Discord and what have you later. But there are so many entrepreneurs, developers working and building on top of ENS, and so the ecosystem working group supports these entrepreneurs with grants and funds. So we have a very robust grant making regime happening right now through the ecosystem working group. And then the public goods group is thinking about how do we take what we've been blessed with to serve the broader community, right? So these are the three core functions of the DAO. There's a forum where there's a lot of conversations, a lot of ideas happening, a lot of passionate debate and discussion. But it's one of the more well-functioning and performing DAOs. And our governance lead, Alicia.eth, has done a phenomenal job of supporting the DAO and the stewards.
That's amazing and awesome. And I love hearing that because, DAO participants are really, the next generation's version of shareholders. And there's a lot of 3-letter agencies that would like to have a conversation about what that looks like. But the core concept is there and it's sound and solid. And actually, I believe it's a better model than what we currently see with the broker shareholder model. But we have a lot of technology and a lot of kind of governance to get there in the long and short term.
Yeah. We'll continue. Sorry, go ahead,
please.
I was going to say, we're going to continue to experiment with the DAO toolkit, and I think if you're looking for DAOs and what they will look like in the future, the ENS DAO is a great place to look for best practices and what have you.
Love it. So real quick, let's do some competitive analysis. So there's ENS, and then there's one of your competitors called Unstoppable Domains. I've used both, and the domains that I buy from ENS I use. The domains I buy from Unstoppable, I don't know why, but something's not there, and I'm sure it's a user error. But what's the bigger differentiator kind of between the two of you guys? Because it's a little bit of the fishing in the same pond.
The Web3 domains, and there's several other protocols now that are creating Web3 domains with the idea of making it simpler to transact value. I think one of the differentiators is that we are, we're sort of first in the space, and we focus on .eth. However, we have the ability to convert any number of DNS domains into an ENS domain. So many people don't know, but you can convert your .coms to have the same functionality as an ENS domain. Your .com, your .io, your .xyz, your .art. So there's just so much more that you can do with an ENS domain versus some of the other domain services out there.
That's very cool. So the process is, so if I wanted to take yWhales.com and turn it into an ENS domain, what extra functionality would I get?
Yep. So you'd be able to use it just like your .eth. Okay. So just like how you want to send Ethereum to a particular address, you can use your j.com or yWhales.com, just like you would use your .eth. So that's one of the cool and unique features that we have. The other thing that I think differentiates us as well is that we see ourselves as a public good. We want to be foundational, cornerstone technology for everyone. And that's why we're governed by a DAO. We want this to be a perpetual, sustainable organization, no matter who is here and who's in these seats. We're not venture backed. We're funded by the DAO. And I think we do have a sort of public goods type mindset here. And in the future, I do want to see how we can work with towns, municipalities, governments on identity solutions as well.
Love that. Great answer. So let's go ahead and let's pivot to a little bit of current events, because and so we can go ahead and take off the ENS hat, and let's go into Khori, kind of the Web3 degen. You have a lot of experience in the space. You've worked in and out of the regulatory space for a while. I mean, you also understand kind of adoption and Web1. How are you feeling? Let's just go ahead and talk about the FTX implosion. The poster boy, truly one of the largest poster boys of crypto, is turning out to be an entire massive scam with clear indicative ties to government officials around the world.
Yeah. Jay, I'm disappointed. That's a huge feeling that I have. We don't have any assets on FTX. I think I used FTX once to on ramp because I was using Star Atlas, so put some soul on it. But yeah, I have feelings of disappointment because so many different places in business and government had the ability to check and balance this institution, and it failed. And then it puts a black eye on our whole industry. And we're all working so hard to build the future, to present the industry in a positive light. And like, we keep getting hit over and over again. And someone that was elevated to be so trusted to have this type of fall, is just extremely, extremely disappointing. But I think about the degen culture and how some of us are really quick to try and ape into projects without doing the due diligence. That's a problem. And I think on this occasion, we saw this happen with VCs. They aped into this, thinking that we're riding the next wave.
And these are not inexperienced VCs. I mean, you're talking about Sequoia Capital. You're talking about some of the largest, most like the due diligence that needs to be done. It is I mean, for anyone that doesn't understand the space, when you go out and you're saying I'm raising at a $10 billion valuation, $30 billion valuation, there's a lot of conversations that are happening and a lot of documents that are going back and forth. Looking at let's go back to Web 1. The reason why Web 1 was built out the way it was is because there were some very forgiving regulations and regulatory bodies such as ICANN that showed up and said, "Hey guys, that's cool. You're all doing a bunch of random things. Here's some standards of which we're all going to integrate and operate with to make sure that a .com is a .com is a .com." Web3 has always been kind of like, we don't need regulatory advice. We don't need regulation. Unfortunately, I'm starting to believe that we do. And I don't, but I want to, put an asterisk there that I think it needs to be common sense, and come from people that truly do understand where the entity is today and where it's going, over the next few years in asset class.
I think our current regulatory regime, or lack thereof, here in the U.S., allowed this to happen with FTX and a lot of other firms that are going offshore because of uncertainty here domestically. That's one of the things that has to happen in order for the industry to be able to continue to grow and thrive. I do think we need some common sense, reasonable, rational regulation here. I think that can only help us. To think that we can operate completely without any KYC or KYB, that's just not reasonable.
And on the conversation, I think it's entirely okay for there to be the darknet. I think that there is an allowance for to be anonymous. I think there's definitely a time and a place to kind of have your privacy and enjoy it. Financial transactions. And a financial ecosystem of which can mean the difference between you being able to put food on your plate or not. I believe, that's not where you want any anonymity in any way, shape, or form. And you want to make sure that if you're interacting with a contract, the same as if you're interacting with a business, who are they? What's backing this? And the FOMO is real. I mean, it truly is.
Yeah.
and that's a human nature that's never going to go away, which is why there's regulations on, there's a Better Business Bureau, there's an attorney
Right.
generals, there's a lot of things in place to make sure that consumers aren't defrauded by people that have thought about it a lot longer than they have.
Right. Right. Also, Jay, I think about the leadership failure of what just happened right now. And if we think about our community in YPO, a lot of us joined this organization when we were younger, and knowing that we needed support, mentorship, community, wise individuals around us to support us as we were venturing into a new leadership journey. And apparently, there was just a complete lack of that in this situation. For any new leaders out there, you have to have some type of mentorship. You have to have, and particularly if you're dealing with billions of dollars in customer assets, there has to be some level of accountability there, to protect yourself.
Yeah, I have a feeling we're going to find out how deep this fraud is in the next few weeks to months, because there's some things that existed. There's documents of which there are shown that were falsified, and so they had gap audits. Like you're familiar with this. Like a gap audit is like a gap audit is a gap audit. These are CPAs and CFAs that are risking their entire reputation to sign off on this. There is a mountain of paperwork and paper trails that will lead to fraud. There's no way around this. I think the New York Times got everything 100% wrong, and it was really clearly indicative of how big this iceberg and how deep it goes. If you have the New York Times writing a puff piece and saying it wasn't Sam's fault. That's a big miss.
Yeah, and that's an indication of the proximity to the regulators, the proximity to elected officials, which is really concerning.
Yeah. So let's throw in a little bit of hypothetical. If ENS, and again, not Khori, but if ENS could propose common sense regulations to this industry to help any level of adoption, do you have it? And this is off the top of your head, you're not prepared for this. Is there anything that you can think of that would just help create a level playing field for all entrepreneurs in the space?
Yeah. So at a very high level, and I'm starting to delve a little bit more into the details of regulation. But a high level, I think first and foremost, let's secure the stablecoin, right? And let's get stablecoin regulation right. Let's have organizations that are regulated, reserves verified, liabilities verified, but at least that sector. Let's get that right, because we in DeFi we all use stable coins, So I think that's a low hanging fruit. It's a digital dollar. We should be able to figure that out. Right. The other thing that can sorry, go ahead.
No, I love that answer, and let's take a second on that one before you get your second one, because the idea that consumers feel safe to stay in blockchain is one of the keys. And right now we've seen, from our peak of $3 trillion as an asset class, we're down to about 900 million or 900 billion. And the reality is because people did not feel safe in stablecoins. And that concept needs to change, because the amount of time it took us to get to that $3 trillion number was 12 years. It's going to take a lot. It's not going to take as long to get there, but we want to make sure that money in the market stays in the market, even if they want to go risk off.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's the way to go. And there's so many different people who are working on that. This FDS situation has set us back, definitely. But I do hope in the new year we can start to make progress there. Another thing, Jay, that I'd like to see is clear protections for developers. If you think about what happened with Tornado Cash, and the concerns that open source developers have, we're building products and services that anyone can use. But the idea that we could be potentially liable for a third party using our service, that's problematic. So some protections for developers as well. The other thing, like we need to understand that it's a new world. Crypto it's a different asset class. it is not as cut and dry as a typical security. Right? We have to get good, intelligent heads in the room to hammer out what should regulation look like for a cryptocurrency asset, because there are individuals talking about wanting to regulate NFTs. I mean,
and NFT.
no.
When I hear things like this all the time, it makes it very clear to whoever's speaking that they have no concept of what they're talking about. Regulating, NFTs is like regulating, JPEGs. I mean, you've defined a term. You want to regulate cars? That's great. Well, how?
Mm-hmm.
Why? What definition? Is it a car? Is it a motorcycle? Is it an airplane? You want to, regulate motor vehicles? That's fabulous.
Mm-hmm.
But we need to understand, are there different types? There's many different types.
Mm-hmm.
And no offense, the space is evolving so quickly. I think too tough of regulation right now will stifle an industry, which we've already seen has primarily moved offshores. I will clearly say on this call and definitively that the United States is being left behind in innovation in Web3 technologies, because we lack the ability to allow the asset class to grow in any meaningful capacity. That doesn't mean, let it go do whatever it is. You want to contain them as much as you can. But when we think about Web 1 and why Amazon is the behemoth it is today, regulators go, you know what? You're online. You don't have to adhere to this brick and mortar sales tax thing that we make everyone else do. So we're gonna give you an opportunity to let this asset class grow, because we see something about it in the future that could be good for all of mankind. I see those same kind of mythical creatures floating around in Web3. Like, these are good for humanity. But if we can't let them grow, if we can't let them prosper, we're never going to know what their true potential ever is.
Yeah. And we have an issue with sort of the generational mindset. Who are the individuals that are regulating right now, and what generation are they a part of, and what has been their experience? We talked earlier about this generation coming up being digital native. Our kids playing Minecraft and using tokens. Like they get this space and they understand this space, but unfortunately, I think a lot of regulators are trapped in 50s and 60s mindset. So another huge problem. We need other ideas at the table when discussing regulation.
100%. Khori, again, really amazing, perspectives on the asset class, where it came from, where it's going. And there's just so much happening here, especially with regulation, kind of looming over us right now. There's probably going to be a little bit less, eyes on DeFi right now, because CeFi is melting down as we see it. But let's kind of talk a little bit as we lead towards a close here. Where do you see ENS going? Like, what's some of the big kind of projects or thoughts on your roadmap? And then also, kind of in conjunction with that, where do you see kind of Web3 going over the next 5+ years?
Yeah, great. So with regard to ENS, as I mentioned earlier, we haven't really had a sustained marketing and PR effort. So over the next couple years, you're going to start seeing more marketing from us in a wide variety of places. And I'm really excited about some of the strategic marketing efforts we're planning right now. So I think one of the things that has to happen is educating the market, educating normies about ENS. So you're definitely going to see that. We're going to be creating a normie on-ramp.
Yeah.
Right. A normie on-ramp to Web3 to make it easier to purchase a domain, get assigned your Ethereum address, and prepare people to engage in Web3. We want more high-quality integrations. We talked about the Coinbase integration that we just had, so you're going to see more of those coming down the pipeline. And then also very interested in Web 2 integrations. People are using Twitter, are using their ENS domain in Twitter, but let's actually integrate it into the platform, and then some of the other social media companies as well. So I think we can look forward to seeing some of those integrations start to happen. Right now, ENS doesn't naturally resolve into a browser. You can use .link, right? So yWhales.eth.link or .limo to display. But we'd like to see more browser integrations, so your .eth can resolve onto the browser.
That's fabulous. And it's
Yeah.
one of those things that Web3 is an entire kind of rebuild of Web 1 in a certain, aspect. Like, it's not an evolution. Web 2 was kind of like, hey, we're going to take a bunch of the stuff, migrate it to the cloud, make it work on some different screen sizes and a variety of other things, depending on how you look at it. Web 3, we've got to really start almost over from scratch and fix some of the sins of Web 1 that we just didn't know where we were going. No one anticipated that every microwave and outlet in your entire house was going to need an IP address and be interacting with you in some way. And so this concept of kind of digital ownership, digital ID, is all things that Web3 solves very, very well. This is my house.
Yes.
These are all the assets inside my house. I don't want to use a third-party platform. I can use it, but at the end of the day, I don't want to have to rebuild my entire house's smart systems just because I switched ISPs or want to use a different provider.
Right. You think about our name, Ethereum Name Service. In the future, you can think of us as the everything name service.
Yep.
Because we believe anything that's digitally connected to the internet, anything that has an IP address, a serial number, I think there's an opportunity for human readable names to assign ownership, assign identity. So that's another step that I think we can work towards. The everything name service. But for Web3, a couple things have to happen, right? One, we do have to make sure that we have a safe, secure, and simple on-ramp. Right? Safe, secure, and simple. And I think the best way for that is to assign people an ENS address, get them started with an Ethereum address, and of course, you can add any number of cryptocurrencies to your ENS address. And then you enter the space that way. That identity you can use across all Web3 properties. When you log into, prior to us, when you logged into a particular dApp, you would see your Ethereum address. With the reverse resolver, you can now see your .eth when you log into various accounts. But I do think that on-ramp is important, and we have to do a better job of educating about Web3 hygiene. When you think about centralized exchanges versus DeFi, we use centralized exchanges for on-ramp, for off-ramp, but you secure your coins, you secure your bags, you self-custody, right? Like that's what we should be talking about.
Yeah, no, the concept of owning your identity is people have tried numerous times. You can own your identity on this, you can own your identity on that, but we're truly talking about real ownership here, and the idea that logins are no longer owned by these services. So you've got a Facebook login, a Twitter login, a Instagram login, and a variety of others, and essentially they own your identity. Like they're allowing you access to their system, but if it's such a time they decide not to, all of your data is gone, all of your data is lost. And so if you're on Twitter and you say something that the Twitter gods don't agree with, free speech be damned, they're going to go ahead and remove you from that system, and everything that you've done to date is owned by them, and they're going to tell you it's theirs and you can't access it anymore. The concept that Twitter says, hey, we don't want Jay on our platform anymore, and I can take these are my tweets, this is my concept, and move it to a different service. I want to go on to somewhere else without kind of losing where I am and who I am. I've put time, energy, money into my handles. I put time, energy, and resources into building this online identity. Hey, these are private companies and they can say no, but also they can't say that I no longer exist and the work that I put in is just gone. I think that's one of the biggest things that I'm excited to see you solve over the next decade.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, this permissionless piece is so key, and the fact that anyone can build on top of ENS, and in terms of distributed ledger technology in general, anyone can make an app and build something, and you can port, as you're saying, port all of your interactions, port all of your informations from project to project, and really own your identity. And I think that alone, it fixes one of the greatest sins of Web 1, Web 2.
Awesome. Love it. Love it. Khori, people want to get involved in the DAO. They want to get involved in ENS. Where's the best way to kind of find everything you guys are doing?
Yeah, so please, the ens.domains is a great place to go to learn about us and get started. On Twitter, we're at ENS domains, and you'll be able to find out about all of our activities. The DAO has a robust engagement calendar, so several meetings every week, and then the community as well. Once you start to follow the hashtag ENS tag on Twitter, you will see a ton of activity. But community members host many times daily. There's an ENS update that happens daily at 11 a.m. Eastern time, where community members talk about what's happening in the ecosystem and in the space. So tune in.
I love that. The rate of innovation in the space is unlike anything I've ever seen before, because it doesn't matter how amazing your startup is, doesn't matter how amazing your technology is. Having a community that is deathly loyal to your mission and vision, and solidifying those values is unlike anything we've seen today. I mean, to have shareholder voices actively engaged from an early startup level and beyond is a concept of which that we're going to look back on and say, how did we ever deal without this? How did we ever create businesses without our consumers' direct feedback along the way? And I'm really excited for you, Khori. I entirely endorse what ENS is doing. And for all the yWhales out there, any kind of questions, comments, concerns, you know where to find Mr. Whittaker and ENS. And we really look forward to your future involvement in yWhales.
All right. Thanks so much, Jay. Great to be here with you.
Awesome. Take care. See you guys next time.